Welcome to the Good Reading Podcast, proudly sponsored by Book People Gift Cards. A Book People gift card is the perfect gift for readers of all ages. Simply order your gift card online at bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au. Redeem in any one of over 500 bookshops across Australia. Visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au.
She is dreading the arrival. Since boarding the plane in London, like a dog pulling against a leash, she has felt she's going the wrong way. Sucked back into a past she thought she had escaped forever. Freedom isn't the price of a plane ticket, she thinks, as we take ourselves wherever we go. Her apprehension has no effect on the big Boeing that, landing with a thud, sways from side to side in a series of kangaroo hops before the mighty brakes tether the beast and bring it to heel. A spontaneous uproar of cheers and clapping explodes in the cabin as the sensation of rolling smoothly on terra firma signals that the turbulent flight is at an end. The uproar is tempered when passengers are advised to remain in their seats. Two burly, Bermuda-shorted men are enacting the Australian ritual of disinfecting the plane by moving through the aisles to spray the cabin from high-held aerosol cans. When the red-headed one pauses near her aisle seat, his freckly lower arms seem familiar, but she realizes it is the odor of hair oil fermented with alcohol impregnated upper body sweat that is resurrecting her long-dead father, the father who holds her from the grave, who traps her in troubled hard blue eyes before vanishing.
Today I'm talking to Judy King about her first novel, Agnes, A Childhood Betrayed and Reclaimed. Judy King, welcome to the Good Reading Podcast.
Thank you, Greg. Very nice to be here.
As I was reading Agnes, I wondered what kind of book I was reading. It has the detail of a really well-maintained diary, but also the deep self-reflection of a memoir, but it is a work of fiction. How did this book come together, and what part might those elements have played in its creation?
I think it's all of those things. The book was suggested to me by my psychiatrist after I came back to Mallorca, fled a rather bad marriage in London. I was in a sufficient state psychologically to need help. And so he suggested that I should write. And so I thought, well, I don't think I can do that. But bit by bit, because there was a huge resistance in me to tell this story, and it is my story, which took me quite a long time to break down. Everything seemed easier than writing, but bit by bit, I chipped away at it, and finally, I got to do it, and not only do it, I started to, in fact, enjoy doing it. And then finally, the manuscript, I'd sort of written it more or less for myself, but a friend suggested I send it to the literary consultancy in London. And so it was picked up there by an editor called Frankie Bailey. She liked it and asked if she could contact me direct and deal with me direct. And so I agreed. And originally I'd written the whole thing in the first person. But as the story is about, it's an adventure in reclaiming lost childhood memory, more or less by coming back to where the childhood happened, which was Sydney. Her idea was that perhaps the story would be better told in the third person with the reclamation of memory in the first person. And by going back to those places, well, the first memory is kicked off by chance. And that's actually did happen in Gordon, in Lennox Street, Gordon in Sydney. And that was when, and that actual incident of meeting an old, this old lady had been living in that street for a very long time. And so what she told me about what happened in the house we used to live in triggered off the first memory, which sort of was like a stone being thrown into a pool. And bit by bit, more memories started coming. It was like that was the first piece of information I needed from a stranger to start the process of reclaiming what was lost in my childhood, what I could no longer remember, because it was too painful to remember. And so that's the process of how the book came about. First of all, to be in the third person through editing, and then the first person with the reclamation of memory.
At what point does the author separate fact from fiction in creating a work of fiction?
Well, it became more and more a true story. I mean, it in the beginning, it was more fictional, but as the editing process took place, and in the third person, I felt freer to be truthful about my own story, and that process actually made me feel more confident about telling it as it was.
And is that what kept you writing, drove you on to complete the task?
Yes, because it was sort of a discovery for me as well. All of those past memories I'd lost. It was like what happens psychologically is that we repress what we can't manage at a certain age. And so this is what they call a disassociation. At a certain age, it would be impossible to go on growing up and manage to develop and stay sane if certain memories remained. I mean, I'm not a technical person, but that's the only way I can put it. A girl's got to get on and grow up, and certain things have just got to be put aside. And in my case, it turned out to be a lot of things. So that was how it came about. I was very pleased to write it, and once I'd written it, I wanted other people to share it, and especially people who'd had a similar situation to me. I mean, I became a kind of activist. I wanted to shine a light on abuse, really, because it's so easily put aside in a family for the well-being of the whole. And so it became a conviction, if you like.
Let's talk about the character of Agnes, or the parts of you that have made their way into the character of Agnes. She's a troubled character, troubled by both her present and her past. What has shaped Agnes in particular?
What she felt, I mean, like most young girls, that finding a partner and marrying and like all her schoolmates would be the solution to that. Was the fait accompli for her life. But what happened was, given that she was unaware of a lot of her childhood background, she was attracted against herself. So we're attracted to what we know. So in the best sense, we're attracted to, if we had a very nice childhood, we're attracted to parental figures that were good and loving figures. But in my case, it wasn't that. That wasn't my case. So unfortunately, all my emotional relationships left me on the point of a nervous breakdown and out of pocket. So there was a point when I fled from the last marriage in London, when I decided, well, most people I knew were retiring. it was time for me to shut down the operation and see what had gone wrong. So it was that really and so that's how I did. I just became a recluse. And as I started to get more strength from assimilating these lost memories, I found that my curiosity opened up because it was like it wasn't so clogged up with repression. So as I freed myself through writing, I found myself becoming more and more curious. And it was actually a tremendous bonus. It was a liberation. Writing has been a liberation for me, a catharsis, you call it. And so that was my luck, really, because all of a sudden I look back and think I wouldn't have done any of those things I did, given my present mindset.
Let's talk about the Keen family. The Keen family is not a family I really want to be part of. A toxic environment, that's, I guess, the best way to describe it. Then that's gradually revealed through the story, along with a troubled personal life, along with the dominant and fairly narcissistic mother. How much of that is fiction and how much is fact?
Well, that is very much fact. For a child in my position, it's a tremendous strain because it means you have to, and in my case, I did, invent another life to live through at school and outside the home. And children love their parents, no matter how terrible they are. And in my case, I spent my life trying to reform my mother. I saw myself as her champion, and as she was comical, really, because she had no interest in accuracy or the truth. Neither of them had any interest in the truth. So I was there as the guardian to protect her against, because I knew people laughed at her because she was a laughable character, a pretentious, silly woman who'd given herself all sorts of airs and graces. I suppose you'd call, there's a character, Mrs. Malaprop, I suppose. She was like that. She gave herself all these airs and graces. So that was I was watchful and trying to protect my mother. But I suppose, in effect, she stole my childhood because I was the adult. I became the adult who was watchful and wary of what was going on around me. I became a problem solver because that's how I stayed in the game, by being there to solve, like Scheherazade, I suppose, I kept thinking, no, well, if you do this, or maybe if you just think if she could do that, or you could ask her to do this, that would solve the problem. So a lot of the things in my character that have been useful came about solving my mother's problems.
We first meet Agnes more or less on a plane on the way home, and this is a return at her mother's request. What does Agnes hope to find in Sydney on her return?
Agnes, deep down, she wants to confront her past. She wants to be an investigative journalist on her own behalf. But she makes more important the needs of other people, as she's always done. So the needs of her brother to solve his problems financially, and the needs of her mother, that the mother needs her to come back to solve her problems, really. Place was very important to her. And it's interesting, when I went recently, I've just come back from Sydney for the first time in 17 years. I hadn't been there. And remarkably, I knew my way around. So that was a real thrill. And everything was so much more important to me. It was like place in my childhood had come back to me. And so much memory was contained in place. So by going back and experiencing where I grew up again, that was, in fact, useful and the strength of psychoanalysis analysis that I'd done in Mallorca meant that I was able to manage to accept the memories from the past that I blocked out as a child.
It's interesting that you say that because despite Agnes's difficulties through life, when she returns to Sydney, she takes great pleasure in the physical environment and the places that she remembers and visits.
Place becomes much more important for abused children because they don't have that nurturing at home. So they look, I mean, for me, I used to look where I lived. I knew every tree and every plant. I knew all the neighbors and their friends. I was so, especially if they were foreign and non-Catholics, I was particularly interested in, because I was thinking there's got to be a better world than this. Maybe they've got the answer, someone from another world. It was very scary because I felt like I was going against my family to reveal what lay beneath those memories, to actually claim them as my own. It was conflictive. I think this kind of process has to be very conflictive because you've settled into a way of managing to be in the world, although at great loss, personal loss and personal development, intellectual especially. It was the best thing I'd ever done, really.
This is in many ways a book about remembering. Does that somehow dictate its shape?
Yes, I think it did, because the structure from the very beginning is about place. It's about Woolloomooloo, and it's about walking down to Woolloomooloo, and it's about Harry's Cafe on Wheels and the old pub. There's an old pub down at Woolloomooloo, and I don't know if you're from Sydney, are you?
I am, yes.
Because it's got the old tiles. And then when you look through the window, it's got Tooheys Old and Tooheys New, which hasn't changed since I was a child. That's how the pubs looked. I mean, I can remember even in Alexandria, near Moore Park, where there were a lot of factories, and they used to hose those pubs out at closing time when they had 6 o'clock closing, like an animal's pen or something, you know. So yeah, for me it was it was a thrill again to go back to Sydney recently, because the place became just that much more vivid. It's a sort of, the freer you are, I think, inside, the more vivid you see the world somehow. That was my experience anyway.
Ceramics, art and antiques, reforming and renovating houses all the way from Paddington to Mallorca. These have all been activities as part of your creative life. But what eventually drew you to writing?
I lost the ability to read at school. At one stage, I was an avid reader, but it was when the abuse at home became more intense. In my teenage years, I was unable to read, and I was unable to take in the sense of what I was reading. If I read, I would just read words. I wasn't able to grasp the sense behind the words, because I think I was just so full up. My psychic sense was just full of repression. There was just no more room. I couldn't understand why I couldn't manage at school and why I failed at everything. And that's something that has really happened in my years of self-analysis and actual psychological analysis with a psychiatrist, that I've become able to read in a way I never was able to read, and understand the sense of everything I read. Writing was completely out of my possibilities until recently.
Agnes, was clearly a very personal journey for you, quite an undertaking. What would you like readers of this story to take from it?
I'd like people to be able to know how it feels to be someone in that situation. I mean, the incredible stress on a child who is trying to manage the world around them, which is so bleak. I would like readers to be able to see that, how it feels to be that child in that position, and also to shine a light on other people who've had that experience, so that they could feel free too to be able to confront their past. It's quite unusual to change, especially later in life, like I've done. I know that because I meet people all the time, and I think they're still the same set pattern they always were, you know. But this, I mean, I have now the pleasure of being able to lie in bed and remember the past and be aware how differently I would have managed my life, given these recent last 10 years, particularly.
Judy King, it's been wonderful of you to share your story with us, and thank you for joining me on the Good Reading Podcast.
Oh, it's a great pleasure, Greg. Thank you very much.
I've been talking to Judy King about her first novel, Agnes. It's published by Ginninderra Press, and you can find it at goodreadingmagazine.com.au. My name's Greg Dobbs, and thanks for listening. This Good Reading Podcast was brought to you by Book People Gift Cards. Share the joy of reading with a Book People gift card. To find out more, visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au.